So when's the last time you saw this film?
The last time I saw the movie?
Yeah.
I think we watched it last year sometime again. Yeah. Now and again, it comes up and we have a look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched it again today, and I hadn't seen it for a long time, and it's really good film. So like last time, we'll have the film playing in the background for timing, but I think we're mostly sort of talk sort of generally speaking rather than sort of too much scene specific. But there's certain points that I think we'll reference.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for one other person to join us.
Are you able to give the book a bit of a pro today?
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be my first thing. So we'll talk about the book as part of the introduction.
Right. And you might mention that there's a deal for it on the publisher's website, coitmedia.com.
All right. Yeah, lovely. So what was that? What was the name of the publisher again?
Coit, Quoit, media.com.
.com. There's a deal at the moment.
That's Rick Davies' publishing company.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll certainly mention that in there.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure. So, right, I think we're pretty much ready to go. Oh, Ian says, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Ian, for joining us. Okay. So I think if we begin, so I'm just going to welcome everybody to this watch along of a funny thing on the way to the forum. It's a really good film, very sort of a unique film, I would say, very sort of slapstick and farce, and sort of it reminded me a little bit of what a big budget carry-on film might have been like, if in best possible way. I mean that. So I'm just going to introduce. Obviously, we've been joined by the co-star Annette Andre for this watch along this evening. Annette's credits include The Avengers, The Prisoner, the Saint, The Return of the Saint, and obviously the film we're watching tonight. Is there any other credits in that you'd like to mention?
Sorry, say again.
Any of your credits you'd like to mention that I haven't already done so?
Oh, there's a lot. There's Randall and Hopkirk Deceased, of course, and The Avengers, The Prisoner. I mean, does go on and on.
Yes, yeah. And I think a lot of people will know Randall Hopkirk if they're in America as the partner, and my partner, the ghost, because obviously it wasn't Randall.
Yes, my partner, the ghost. And they know The Prisoner, of course, and The Avengers, and The Saint, and Persuaders, and all of those, yes.
Persuaders, of course, if you did videos last time. If anybody missed the Persuaders event we did, it is on my YouTube channel. I wanted to start, Annette, with just talking about your wonderful autobiography, because you're very kind to send me a lovely signed copy, which I will. So I just wanted to ask you, first of all, how did the idea of doing your autobiography come about?
It started as an idea that I might write just a little diary thing for my daughter, because I don't know enough about my own mother, so I thought that'd be nice. I'll just write, and then it turned into a memoir.
All right, yeah. And how long did it sort of take you to put it all together? How long did it take you to how long did the process take from writing it to publishing?
Publishing. Oh gosh, I think by the time I researched it all, and got clippings together, all that sort of thing, I think it was a good 18 months or so.
All right, yeah. And did you enjoy the writing process?
Yes and no. It's a difficult thing to write, because I wanted it to be honest, and there are parts that you have to juggle whether you should put that in or not, and then you decide to be honest, and you do, and it can be quite painful in some ways. And
Mm.
other ways it was very funny because and light, you know, remembering a lot of things.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there are so many people on the back page of the book that obviously you've encountered through your career, and I think I will just sort of get the book in front of me occasionally and just say, talk about this person or that person. But obviously, we won't cover everybody because we won't spoil the
Well, there's
the
a
joy.
few from that. There's a couple from the film on the back there. So
Yeah, there is indeed. So, and we should mention that your publisher,
Rick
Quote Media,
Davey, yes.
is has a discount sort of deal on your book at the moment on their website.
He has a deal, yes,
Yeah.
an
So if
offer.
people, oh, lovely. So if people Google that, obviously they'll find your book on there. So I'd recommend that they do so. Because obviously we've got a lot of your fans watching tonight, of course. So I think probably we'll get started with the actual watch along. So everybody's got their copies of the film to hand. So I'll do a countdown from 5, and then we'll press play and we'll start.
Okay.
Okay. So just give people a few seconds to get their copy together. Okay. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and play. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Annette, was how did you end up being involved with the film?
Well, it was a normal sort of casting, and they were looking to cast for the movie, and I got a call from my agent saying that there was a meeting for me with Dick Lester, who was the director,
Yeah.
and I had no idea what part it was. I didn't know. I knew a little bit about the musical itself. I hadn't actually seen it because I'd been working, but I knew about it, and I went along for the interview. And it was in a little sort of shed. So it was Twickenham Studios, but a very small, almost like a shed with a couple of tables in there and that sort of thing. And Dick Lester, and we started to chat. And he said to me, "Oh, here, sit down." And the only place to sit down was on the table. So he sat on one table, I sat on the other. And we proceeded to have this audition, or not audition, but interview, which was very funny because he talked about everything except the movie.
Oh.
And he asked me questions about me and had me talking about all sorts of different subjects. And I kept thinking, yeah, but this is fine, but when are we going to talk about the movie? And he was a strange man. He wasn't sort of overly demonstrative or happy. I mean, no, not very many jokes. I tried to be a bit jokey, but he wasn't. And you had to he expected you to pull it out of him a little bit while he was also pulling things out of me. And I left.
Sorry, now I've lost your audio. Oh, I can. You're quite faint.
You heard you.
Yeah. Now it's fine. It's popped back. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Something must have, because I didn't. So we talked about everything except the movie, and I left wondering what part it was, but also he had mentioned some of the stars in it, who were really left me gasping because my goodness, what a lineup! And I guess I spent a couple of weeks waiting with no word. I'd call my agent. No, we haven't heard anything. They're getting other people for other parts, and they're looking at people. And then one day I got a phone call saying, "You've got it." And then they told me what the part was. It was really strange. It was very funny. So a couple of weeks later, I flew to Madrid because that's where we were meeting and starting, and we were using the old Bronston studios there, which is just outside of Madrid. So we were using those. Yeah.
And how did working in Madrid compare to working, say, in the UK?
Well, it's quite different in many ways. The actual working part is not, but of course you're in a strange country, so you've got a lot of different ambience around you. And the studios were built. We were using the old studios, or some of the old sets from a movie called El Cid.
Yes.
A big sort of movie that had happened several years before. And we were using some of their sets, but dressed up for us, you know. So it was out of Madrid and it was more in the country. It was very big. It was interesting. And of course, being in Madrid at night when we were able to go out was fun. I mean, there was a lot of nice things attached to it all.
So I suppose because all the casts were coming into Madrid, is a bit different to, say, based at in London, where people would commute in and out. You were all kind of together through the duration, so that must have created a nice
It was. Some of us were put into apartments in Madrid, in quite a nice block of apartments, some of us. And then people like Zero Mostel and Buster Keaton and Phil Silvers, I don't know, they had apartments, they obviously had themselves. I know that a couple of them had wives with them. Phil had his wife with him, and Buster had his wife, and you know that. So they were more inclined to do things by themselves alone. We didn't have a lot of big dinners together and things. But I had an apartment, the same apartment where a building where Michael Crawford was, and several other people from the show and everything. So yes, we had a social time like that quite often. But you know, not all the time. It's nice to sort of get away from people and then come back and work the next day. Yeah. But I started making friends over there, so that was good.
Because it was several months, wasn't it, that you were over there for?
Yes, we filmed. We went way over time, and we were there for 6 months. Yeah.
And you say you went over time. Was there production issues or just the complexity involved?
Oh, I think there were some production issues. Dick Lester was a different kind of director. He really didn't conform to the time. He was very free and easygoing with film. I mean, he just shot masses of film, and then afterwards went in to. I've got to stop for a second. My battery is going down. I didn't check it. I'm so sorry.
No problem. I'm just going to pause the film, so we'll come back to it in a second. So just pausing 6:34 into the film. If anyone's got any questions, then please put them in the chat, and I'll get to them at appropriate points.
Phew, I'm glad I saw that.
Yeah.
Usually I make sure I check. It was the one thing I didn't check today.
I did the same thing a few weeks ago, and I was sort of trying desperately not to look like I was, towing the power on the corner. So no.
Yeah, and I had to go to another room to get the cord. Anyway, what were we talking about?
All right, so I'm just going to start the video again, because we just paused for that second. So okay, so everyone, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Yeah, I think we were talking about Dick Lester being
oh yes, yes, of course, the film,
yeah.
And he was rather cavalier about stunts. That was one of the best things in it, really. Not best things, one of the most extraordinary things. Michael and I did a lot of our own stunts. Well, Michael did most of his own, and I did a lot of mine. And the stunts that we did were absolutely hair-raising. In today's world, I doubt very much you'd be allowed to do it. You just wouldn't. He had us doing things. For example, there was a chase with the what do you call them? The horses and the chariots. That's it, the chariot chase. And at one point, you know, we did have stuntmen who were driving the chariots. You couldn't see them, but they were, because that's a really tough thing to do in the actual chases and things. But in Michael's and my part of it, we were in a chariot with the horses, and we started to rehearse one of the scenes, which was flat out through woods and things like that. And Dick, I was in it, but the stuntman was sitting in the bottom of the chariot, very odd arrangement, but he could see it, but he was actually holding the horses because they were very strong. But when we did the rehearsal, Dick said to us, look, do you think you can drive the horses? Because we're shooting into the back of you at some point, and we can see the stuntman. And I said, yeah, of course, because I was a rider. I could ride. I was quite good. And I said, yes, of course. Now, I'd never, ever driven a chariot before. So, but I thought, no, okay, I have to be different and have to be careful. So I took over the chariot, took over the reins, and I was the only one in it because it was a part before Michael gets in the chariot with me. So it was just me.
Yeah.
And I take off a pair of huge matched grey horses, absolutely beautiful. And I started off, and it was fine when we started off. And then we hit the forest. And I mean, it was the forest. There were paths through, so we were going. Suddenly, the horses realized, I guess, that I wasn't a strong and efficient driver. And they realized that, and they take the bit, and they just went with me. They just flew, and I couldn't do anything to stop them. And there were trees looming up ahead of me. And all I could think was, oh my God, one horse is going to go that way, the other horse is going to go that way, and I'm in the middle, and that's the end of me, you know, smashed. But as we're careening through, I saw stuntmen sort of around me on their horses. And then I heard my stuntman was an ex-jockey called Mick Dillon. And he was a little wiry guy, you know. And I heard him yelling out, wait, I'm coming, hold on. And I see him come up beside me, beside the chariot on his horse. And then, like, you know, the best Westerns, he draws up to the horse, jumps from his horse onto one of mine, and manages to pull them up. And meanwhile, a lot of the other stuntmen were also careering around getting. It was a wonderful moment. I mean, I was alive and okay, and the horses were okay, but it was quite exciting. But that wouldn't happen in today's world. You would not be allowed to do that. And,
no, I don't think.
And we had other things in the chariot that we had to do, where we had without the horses. We were left in this chariot without the horses, and Michael falls out, and I have to go through a whole barn and break through the door, and both doors at each end with straw falling down and everything. And I didn't have a rehearsal, so I didn't know what I was going to do. But the doors were built of balsa wood. So we careened through, and the balsa wood does just crack as you go through. And then you've got hay bales coming down on top of me and out the other end. And I think I just stood there and hung on and hoped for the best, no matter what happened. So we had quite a few issues with stunt people. There were several people injured in that when the stunt director took it out and did what they call the second unit filming, which they go out and they do a lot of the extra stuff, and where a lot of the actors are not involved. Some are, but are not. And I think there was one actor, Peter Butterworth, I think, was actually injured during one of those. And then I think some horses were, which I hate to think about. And sometimes, yeah, there were injuries. And then Michael and I had some other stunts to do, which were extremely hair-raising. So if you want to hear about those in a while, I will tell you that. Maybe you want to talk about something else first.
Oh, yeah, we'll certainly come back to those. That sounds very interesting indeed. It's quite interesting because obviously Dick Lester does have a reputation for being quite an efficient director, a very quick director. Indeed, that's why he got Superman 2 and Superman 3 when he did, because the producers wanted somebody who would come in on budget, not overshoot or anything like that. So for him to be on a film like yours where it overshoots, and you get the idea of how complicated it was to do. And it's interesting to mention about the sets for El Cid, because obviously when you watch the film, it's it obviously it looks like it has this huge budget, but of course it's probably a bit like Carry On Cleo, because that used the sets for Cleopatra, I think, and that was written around, or we got these sets, let's write a script around it and use all these wonderful sets. I suppose there's a slight parallel to that.
The actual buildings were, for example, there was a temple which had been built there, for the thing, which was a real of temple dimensions with that was a stunt thing that happened, but I'll get to that later. And then and there were other, they built, our company built the street there. They probably had, I think they had the exteriors of all the houses along that street, but they built the street and they built the well and they did all things like that. But yes, certainly the buildings were already erected, already there, and they just, so yes, it does cut down on costs, of course.
Oh yeah, certainly. Just we've got a couple of questions come in. So this is from Ian. So he says, when you sign up for a film or a one-off TV episode, you get the full script, but when you sign on for TV series like Round and Hopkirk, presumably you don't get a sight of all the scripts you'll be filming beforehand. Are there any disadvantage to this, so not having the entire character arc from the beginning? Does that affect how you?
What do you mean not from the beginning? What do you mean by that? Not from the beginning?
I think what Ian's trying to say is that obviously with a film like this, you have the script, you know where your character starts, you know where the character ends. When you want a TV series where it's much more open and developing as you go on, how do you?
Episode by episode, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, there's a big difference in many ways in terms of the script. Even in a TV series, you've got the full script for that episode. So it is a full script. And you may have to do bits and pieces later on, but you do have to do bits and pieces later on after film too. The film itself is just longer and the script is there. And yes, you do have a beginning and an end. Whereas in a series, you don't have a long-term end. You just you think. So it's only the media itself. Television is a different media to work in. It sounds like film, but it isn't. And film is film, and that's really the main difference between things. Except with a series, you know that there's something further on. That's a whole different ballgame. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned that you hadn't seen the Broadway production prior to doing the film. Did you see the stage version afterwards in one of its revivals?
No, I didn't. No, I've missed it each time because either it was in America and I was in England, and I think I was away when they did the English version with Frankie Howard.
Hmm.
or I was working, but I know I couldn't get there, which was a shame. I'd have loved to have seen, but I would have loved to have seen Zero in the
Yes.
Australian version, because
Yeah.
you know, in the film the whole cast was absolutely extraordinary. I mean, to be able to I was young, what was I, 26 or something, to have this cast of people there
Hmm.
that were just amazing. I mean, my father in it was Buster Keaton.
Yes.
You can't get better than that, certainly not back then in those days. And he was the most lovely man. I mean, truly a lovely man.
Hmm.
And would sit down, he'd call for me. He'd say, "Where's my daughter? Where's my daughter? Come and bring her over here." And we'd sit and talk. And it was, it really was a wonderful experience for me, the whole thing. And to see these people working was
Hmm.
even better. I mean, you just watch these professionals who'd been doing for years and years and so talented. I loved every minute of it. And they
Hmm.
were all so lovely, just really nice people. There was only one I had a bit of a problem with, and that was
Now.
Phil Silvers.
Ah,
Yes, Phil Silvers was, everybody sort of, if they saw him coming towards them, they would suddenly disappear,
right.
because he would harangue you forever about everything that he'd done. And he found me maybe not willing, but a very good listener, because he'd
Hmm.
corner me all the time and sit down and tell me and tell me and tell me again and again and again what he'd done. I mean, aside from that, he was a nice man, but he wasn't easy to work with. I didn't do a lot of work with him, but I watched
Hmm.
a lot of the scenes being done, and he wasn't very easy. On the other hand, he knew what he was doing, you know,
Hmm.
and there were certain things that he demanded. Well, if you know what you're doing, you do demand a certain amount of leeway.
Because I think Phil Silvers was originally his name was considered for the Broadway production, the original one that the Zero obviously ended up taking the role of. And I think Phil Silvers said that he didn't take it for two reasons. One, that he didn't like to be on stage without wearing his glasses because he felt he could fall into the audience or something like that. And I think also he said that it was a bit like Sergeant Bilko in a toga. So he thought it was a bit too similar to what he'd done before.
Yeah,
Um, whether
I'll
it
get
was the
you on
money.
that. But
Yeah.
he would have been wrong for that role. He was
Yeah.
perfect in the role that he played in the movie. He would
Yeah.
not have been right in Zero's role.
No. And yeah, and maybe that then he was offered the role he plays now, and he thought, oh, actually, this is better, and that's probably
Yeah,
what convinced him to do it.
yes.
Um, what do you remember about Zero? What kind of man was he?
Oh, Zero was just a lovely man. I mean, uh, I didn't get enough chance to talk to him, not during the filming, because he was on so much.
Hmm.
Uh, but there was a wonderful moment when I was talking to him, and we started talking about art.
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh, I love art. You know, I doodle with it. I draw a bit. I color a bit. That sort of thing." And we started talking because he painted. He did paint Zero, and he started talking about different artists, which I agree. He said, "Have you been to the uh, Prado yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't. I haven't had a chance really." He said, "I've looked at the thing." He said, "We're both off on such and such a day." So
Hmm.
he said, "I'm taking you to the Prado." And he took me
Hmm.
to the Madrid gallery, the Prado, and we had the most wonderful time. And he was so knowledgeable about the paintings, about the artists. I learned a lot from him, and he spent
Hmm.
time and talked with me. And his favorite artist was Boss. So we stopped there. I remember very clearly stopping there and showing me a lot of pictures. But the light in the Prado, I don't know what it's like now, but then was not very good. So he talked about all of that, and the
Hmm.
light here is not good enough, and you see this. No, he I thought it was brilliant of him to take the time for me.
Oh, yeah, that's lovely. We're now seeing on screen your musical number with Michael Crawford. Had you done a lot of musical theatre at this point? Was it something you were comfortable?
No, I had sung a bit. I had sung a little bit. I always got very nervous when I was singing. And this was really the first. I'd done a couple of like review things in my past, but not a musical. So this was the first one. I was absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
We had a lot of rehearsal beforehand, before the movie started shooting. We had all the musical and rehearsals and all of that. Michael and I worked very well together. So, you know, I liked him, he liked me, and it was very good to work with him. We seemed to gel and you know, mutually agree on certain things to do and not to do and how to do.
Because I did see Michael Crawford on stage a few years ago. He did a version of The Go-Between. It was a musical version of that in the West End, and he was obviously brilliant in that role. I get the sense that he was quite a giving actor. Is that fair?
He was. He was one of these people who'd say, "What do you think about this?" And perhaps if we do this, and we really worked together before we started filming, and we talked about the scene and certain moves, and you think this now. He was a very giving and generous actor from that respect. Yes. Yeah.
I'm guessing quite fearless to do some of the stunts that he is famous for.
Oh, well, he used to, I mean, I was amazed what he used to do, because I actually saw him, you know, really doing them. And he took on some of the stunts in that one that were, oh gosh, they would not be allowed today. They would.
No.
But then, you know, we both had to go at that. Maybe it's time to talk about what happened in the temple.
Yes, please do.
It was set in a temple. I was the virgin. I was about to be sacrificed by the head woman there, and who's played by Pamela Brown. And Michael is realizing where I am, and he's running to the rescue. Now the temple, as I said, had 3 cornices. That's the roof that goes up half rounded right to the top. It was very high, very high. So Dick Lester had me, I was lying on the slab with Pamela Brown standing over me with a sword ready to plunge it into my heart or something or other. And then Michael appears at the top of the thing, through the hole in the top, calling down, "No, Philia, come up." And he throws his toga down. He wheels it down, and it's a white toga. And it's wrapped around a thin wire, you know, and the thin wire has got a wire loop around like that, just long enough to put 1 foot in, one feet in. It's not a little proper little stirrup or anything. It's just a round piece of wire. And I'm told to hold on. There was a little bar covered by the toga where I could actually hold on with both hands. And then he said to me, I said, "Well, you know, I've got a long way to go up there. It must be 20, 30 feet up." And he said, "Yes." He said, "Well, in this wire hoop," he said, "you can rest your foot a little bit from time to time." He said, "But don't put weight on it because it'll snap. It's only fuse wire." Because they didn't want it to be seen. They'd run it up through the back of my hair and then into the toga. So I start going up, and Dick's calling down, look down at Pamela and smile. You're supposed to be so happy you're leaving." And I said, "But I'm not very good at heights. I've got vertigo." And he said, "Doesn't matter, look down and smile." And I'm going up and up, and I'm looking down, I'm smiling, and the whole world is twirling around and around and around. I'm going up and up and up. And then he shouts, "No, come down, take it again." We did 4 takes. And each time I was whirling around. And I promise you, I mean, I have vertigo. I look out of a window, and if we're more than 6 feet off the ground, I start getting funny. So up I go again. And on the 4th time, as I was leaving up, the heat from the lamps was so much, I almost lost consciousness. I was hanging on, but I could feel my head was going, and I had to keep saying to myself, "Don't." And Michael saying to me, "Hold on, hold on." And eventually I got up there, and he grabbed my hands and pulled me through the hole. But it was, I had no net underneath. There was nothing. I would have just fallen onto this cement slab.
Yeah.
And, it was just my hands and my willpower. So we got through that. And then we had to get down from the top of the temple on the outside, which is all shiny. I mean, it wasn't exactly, it was very smooth surface. And we had Roman sandals on. And Michael looks down, and he's helping me out. And as we're about to film, he looks down, and right underneath him, there's this big statue, a huge statue, and those Roman statues that they have, with holding a spear up like this. And Michael looked down and he said, "Oh my God, if I slip, that'll be the end of me. No children." So we started to laugh, and it was a really hairy journey down there, I'm here to tell you. We finally made it down, slipping and sliding. We made it. And again, there was nothing to save us. I mean, it was madness in a lot of times, madness. But we were young and we enjoyed it.
Do you think a lot of the madness might have been perhaps because it was shot out in Spain versus, say, Elstree or Pinewood? Do you think there was certain safety was less because of the location?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a Spanish production. It was an English-American production.
Yeah.
And, even in those days, they had insurance for the actors.
Yeah.
I don't know how he got away with it. I don't. I know that he didn't get on very well with the producer, Mel Frank. Right. And that may have been part of it. I just don't know. But, I mean, the insurance today would say absolutely not. No deal, nothing. So I really don't know what happened there. But it was very touch and go in many, many cases. But we tended to laugh and just do it, and I looked at Michael doing his stunts, and I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Well, yeah, that's right. Do you think that a lot of the way the film was made was more in terms of the producer rather than, say, Dick Lester, or was Dick Lester the one that was pushing things a bit too far, or may it have just been the production itself that was?
It was Dick who was pushing things.
Pushing it too far, yeah. Because you had obviously a very good stunt coordinator, Bob Simmons, on the film.
Yeah.
And obviously on a number of James Bond films, so he would have been very much on the ball. What was his view of all this?
I just think Bob, I talked to him quite a lot, actually. I got to know him a little bit. And I think that Bob was not as cautious as he should have been.
Right.
And my feeling is, I have no proof, but my feeling is that he should have looked after the horses better. Yeah, he was a tough guy. And I think he liked working with Dick because there was more leniency from there. And it came out well eventually in the movie, but there were quite a lot of accidents.
You said some of the horses were injured, but were they all okay? Or
I hope so. I wasn't in the second unit. I just heard of it.
Yeah.
But I know that some of the guys, the few of the stunt guys and a couple of actors were hurt. Yes.
I was just wondering, because obviously when you did the Bond films, obviously there was a lot more money probably on a Bond compared to a funny film. Whether there was a budget issue in terms of the stunts, and I mean
I really at that time of my life, I didn't know enough about all that to be able to comment on that properly. No, I don't know.
Because by this time, of course, you had, I think you've probably done a couple of Saints, am I right, by this time? But obviously Round Hopkirk was still later on, wasn't it, after this?
Oh, it was yes, it was about 2 years after the movie.
Yeah. So do you think if you'd been a bit more experienced, then you would have perhaps said, "Oh no, I'm not going to do this stunt"? Your approach to it would have been different if it'd been a bit later in your career, or
probably not. I enjoyed the idea of doing it myself. I have to admit. I mean, it may have been crazy, and I look back now and think, "Gosh, how did we do that and come out?" No, at the time, I mean, I enjoyed doing stunts when I could, and I thought, no, I'm going to do this. Yeah, no. No, we were we weren't too circumspect in that way. Yeah.
And you sort of said you had a stunt double. What was your stunt double like to work with, and how would Bob sort of direct the scene? Say on the carriages, for example.
I didn't, because sometimes it's getting a bit unclear, so I'm not hearing you properly. I'm hearing you.
That's okay. I was just sort of saying, do you remember working with your stunt double at all?
With the stunt doubles?
Yeah. What were they like?
Oh, they were wonderful. Oh yeah, we had a lot of Spanish. We had a lot of the Spanish stunt people, and then there were, of course, a group of the mostly English stuntmen there, working, who'd obviously worked with Bob before and done this sort of thing. And my stunt double, when he could double for me, was, I said, Mick Dillon, who was a little tiny, wiry ex-jockey. And he was great fun. I used to talk to him a lot too. But there was one thing, because they were going to use him in the scene where I'm supposed to be sacrificed and going up into the thing, because they knew it was a dangerous one. And I looked and I said, you can't have him. I mean, I said, look at his legs. He may be small, but I said, look at his legs. They're not my legs. You're not going to. And I had this filmy dress on, you could see. So I said, no, absolutely not. So I ended up doing it myself and nearly falling. Yeah.
I think that's a very good point. I think you've made that back at this time there wasn't that many female stunt performers, so the actor had to do it, or it would look very obvious.
Yeah, obviously. I always thought, why don't they have? Because I'm sure there were women, but they were mostly men. Anyone I worked with were always men, but I certainly had never had a man actually doubling for me. I thought that was a bit off, with his hairy legs and his feet and things. No.
I was talking to a lady for one of these events called Sid Child, and she doubled for Diana Rigg in the Avengers, and she came on, I think, Honor Blackman had done her series, and then she came on with, I think, Diana's first Colour episode. So one season in, and I think she was before then it was male stunt performers doubling the actors, and obviously it wasn't until sort of 60, 65, 66 that it started to sort of change a little bit.
Yes, I think it probably did, because they were always men. But then, in those days, women couldn't do that sort of thing.
I think there was that perception, certainly, and I think it was also one of those industries where maybe it was a closed gentleman's club sort of situation where
Well, it probably was, you know, the
business.
boys together. Yeah, yeah, it probably was. There was a funny thing, I've just remembered it actually, which on the when the movie premiered in Marble Arch, the Odeon up in Marble Arch.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if it's still there, but it was. And they'd arranged for me, they said, oh, we've got this wonderful thing for you. And I had a dress specially made. It was lovely in the sort of Roman style. My hair was all done and everything. I had to meet, they got a car and sent me around, and I had to meet them in a back street behind the cinema. And there was a chariot there with a beautiful horse, and one of the stunt guys dressed as a charioteer and all the gear, you know, the thing like a gladiator type thing. And they said, now you're going to arrive at the premiere in your chariot and we'll all be there and get up. So that's fine. I met the chariot and the stunt man's there and we chatted a bit and he said, well, okay, well, we better get there. They came around and said, come on, got to come out now. So they came out. And of course we entered coming down Edgware Road to turn into where Marble Arch is there. There's all the traffic. I mean, it's about 7 o'clock at night or something, or 6:30. And there's all the traffic. So we move out into the traffic and we've got a lantern. There is a lantern on top of the, you know, in front of the chariot. And we're just going slowly down and the time we're okay. Out of nowhere, this Bobby, policeman, with his hat and everything, walks out, stops, he stands in front of us and goes, hold it. And this, I can't remember the stuntman's name, but anyway, let's call him James. James says, well, yes, what? He says, you can't drive here without lights. And I looked at him and I said, we're in a chariot. And he said, you haven't got lights. I said, we've got a lantern. He said, that's not proper lights. You can't go. And we said, but I said, look, I'm in the movie. And one of the main characters in the movie, around the corner, it's a premiere. And this is what's been set up. Now, the film company hadn't sent people around to be with us or set it up so that we could get there. He refused absolutely to let us go. Do you know what I had to do? I had to get out of the chariot and I had to flag down a black cab. And I arrived just around, it was only take me around the corner, but I'm damned if I was going to walk. Took me around the corner and I arrived in a black cab with all my, you know, lovely Roman dress on and everything. And Mel Frank's standing there and he looks at me and his eyes bug as I get out of this taxi. And he looks around and I said, you might have sent someone. I said, the policeman wouldn't let us come. He said, because we didn't have lights. That was my premiere. Can you imagine? I was furious. Anyway, I guess later we had a big laugh about it.
So the premiere was, yeah. So the premiere was quite nice, despite that your arrival being a bit problematic. Did you enjoy the premiere itself in London?
Yes and no. It was the first premiere, and you're watching yourself. And I'd seen takes of it, of course, but I hadn't seen the whole thing put together. Sometimes you get to see it, the screening, but I didn't get to a screening. And so I saw it, and it was, yes, I did. And then other times you say, oh, I didn't like that bit, could have done better. But on the whole, I'm sure I enjoyed it very much. Yeah. And then we had some sort of dinner after it or something.
I mean, when you watch the whole film, are you happy with how the film turned out? Not just your scenes,
oh yes. I think it turned out very well. I think it was very funny, and I do, you know, get people now, even now, tell me, "Oh, I watched that movie again the other night. Oh, it's so funny. We were laughing, and it's a great movie. It really is. Yeah, it's
I
one
think
of the classics.
I think it holds up very well to today, and it's the humour, and because obviously it's got
The humor. No,
the
we don't have that sort of humor today.
no, we don't. It's sort of that innocent humour that you get in Up Pompeii or Carry On films, and it's light. It's there's something for family members, but it's also something more for the adults as well. So it sort of covers the whole spectrum really. And I think if you were to try to make it today, I don't think you could really. I think it would be, whether you
It
could.
would probably be called dated, but
Yeah.
I happen to find that sort of, I think the humor today mostly is appalling. I don't find it funny. It's all harping too much on reality or aggression, even comedy.
Yeah, I think that's interesting you say that, because I'm a big fan of things like Morecambe Wise and the Two Wannies, and I suppose when you started to get Little Britain come in, and that was probably, it started to get very adult. It was quite sort of,
well, based on reality and bringing out the worst in people. It is actually bringing out the worst in people, but you can do that and still make it kinder and it can be very funny. Yeah, no, it's changed. Everything's changed.
Yeah, some very nice about the innocent humour that you had back in these films, and again things like the Carry-Ons. And I did hear that somebody had bought the rights to the Carry-On films and was going to make some more, but I'm not sure if you could get away with
I wouldn't like to see them remade. I don't know what they do with them. They try to bring it up to date, and it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think all the political correctness, I think, would also make it a bit difficult as well. How did you feel about the glamour aspect of it, sort of, because obviously there's definitely an eye candy element in terms of the female actresses. Was that something that you were quite happy with, about seeing women used as sort of part of the marketing of it, the bikinis and that sort of thing?
Oh, you mean of the movie?
Yeah.
No, well, no, it was fine because it was done as drawings. It wasn't photographs. And in the movie, I mean, the costumes were, of course, midriffs, and they're meant to be sexy, and also that was fine. And I think they publicized it in the right way. Yeah, I think I saw myself in a photograph. Gosh knows where it came from, with me in this sort of mini toga, and I have no idea where that came from. But
because again, that's probably an element that you couldn't have now, would be having all the bikinis and the sort of the flesh showing, and you could have perhaps have had Phil Silver's topless, but you couldn't probably you could probably have the male leads showing flesh, but I don't think you could have the female performers in the same way as you could perhaps back in the 60s. I think as something's changed a little bit.
In the 60s, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh no. Well, it all really, getting into swimsuits and bikinis, things like that, really started with two-piece swimsuits, and then bikinis somewhere in the 50s, 40s through to 50s changed, and then 50s to 60s, and 60s it all sort of burst.
Yeah, because obviously the 60s was obviously quite a revolutionary time, wasn't it, in terms of,
it was in Britain, certainly. In Britain it was, yeah. Very much so. I think more than other countries. It led the way. It was one of the few times it really led the way in that sort of thing in fashion and women. Yeah, because I think that started things off with women becoming more independent and more as people and not just things.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. So Ian's asked another question. He wants to know if you would have liked to have done more movies in your career versus TV.
No, I've done more TV than I have movies. I think I did about 5 or 6 movies, but I've done a lot of television and theatre.
Well, would you have preferred to have done more films, or didn't you?
Yes,
quite
I
happy?
loved it. Yes, I like filming. I like it. I prefer it to television. Although television, when it's filmed, is more. I think I enjoy that more. Television in studios, which is probably not done anymore. Maybe it is. I didn't like that so much. It was a very cold medium, very cold, very technical. Whereas filming, you feel more open, and theatre is best of all.
Oh yeah, yeah. I assume that maybe making a motion picture was probably more waiting around. It was slower, whereas TV was
Yes,
a bit more quicker.
there is all of that. There is more in motion pictures than television, because television you're under a really strict schedule. So you're doing, and if you're not actually filming at that time, you might well be redoing a scene that didn't go well, or they didn't have time to do from the previous episode, or doing a little bit of syncing voice and stuff. So usually you're kept fairly busy.
Oh yeah, yeah. So just for watching on screen, the gentleman who plays the captain, who's a wonderful performance, larger than life. Do you remember much about this particular actor? I'm just trying to find him. Leon Green.
Leon Green. Yeah, it was his first movie, I think, and he was a real presence. He was a nice man. He was a real presence. He hadn't had masses of experience, but I think he did a wonderful job in that. I think he was right for it. He had a great voice, and he was big and strong, and he had and really, he just sort of came on the screen and took it over. And I think he enjoyed it. Other than that, I don't know a lot about him.
He's still with us. He's still going. So
good.
yeah, I think he must be about 90 now. But I think it must be in his late 80s or maybe even 90. But he's
right.
Still,
that's nice to hear. Yeah.
Because obviously you're making a comedy, they say obviously comedy is a very serious thing, but was it also sometimes difficult to keep a straight face? Was it, a very sort of...
I had strict instructions from Dick when we finally started rehearsing and things, in that I'm working with a whole group of actors who are just brilliant with comedy. Buster Keaton, Zero Mostel, Phil Silvers, Jack Guilford. I mean, you can't get better than that. And so I've worked with a lot of comedians in my time, and I know how to sort of interact with them. And I started off in a couple of the scenes, and I was playing the role because I was supposed to be the very subdued virgin, and really not be my own person. I'm just there being beautiful. But I'm working with Buster, I'm working with Zero, and I start to react a little bit. And Dick says, come over. He says, no reacting to them. I said, what? But it was a piece. I'm just there. I'm not doing a lot. He says, no reacting. He said, you're just there. You're just beautiful. You're just me. I had to stay absolutely within this character of this girl who'd been groomed just to be beautiful. And I'm working with these people.
Yeah.
And I said, can't I just smile at that? No. Well, could I just look? No. I was roped in. I could not do anything. So I had to go through the whole movie being just beautiful. No matter what was happening around me, I couldn't react. But there were, I must admit, there were the odd occasions when I couldn't help it. And I'd just go to pieces and laugh. And they'd have to stop the movie. Well, I'm supposed to react at all. So if I got a smile and I started to giggle, that was just not on. So it was hard. It was very hard, really hard character to play. I'd never played a character quite like that.
Because I take it that most characters you could contribute here, contribute there, and sort of mould it. But this obviously seemed very much follow the script, do what Dick tells you to do, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had to just stay there. And I was very against the grain because I like to work with people and I wasn't able to, but I did watch them and I did learn a lot.
We've just seen Peter Butterworth on the screen. Do you know much about Peter?
Peter?
Peter Butterworth.
Oh, Peter Butterworth. Only I had worked with him a couple of times in television, I think. I didn't work with him in theatre. Worked with him in television. He did a lot of work. He was one of those actors who is very good at various at certain parts, but he got a lot of work. He was a very experienced. I think he did quite a bit of theatre. Yeah. I don't know more about him than that, but I liked him. We chatted a lot in the movie, but I didn't have to work with him particularly.
And we just saw on the screen John Pertwee. Did you encounter John Pertwee at all on set?
I did, yes. But with John, I didn't really get to know him. We had a few chats, but I didn't really get. It was a big cast. There were a lot of people, and if you didn't work with them, particularly in a scene, and I wasn't involved in all the scenes, but there was an actor I worked with there, or rather, who was in that I'd worked with several times before. He was an Australian actor called Johnny Bluthal.
Yeah.
And he played, and so I chatted with John quite a lot because I'd known him and worked with him several times in Australia, and we both were in England about the same time. So around then, and then found ourselves in the movie. And other than that, Michael Hordern, I worked with in the movie, and I talked with him a little, but he didn't hang around the set a lot if he wasn't needed. He didn't do that, but he was a lovely man, and I really enjoyed working with him. Yeah.
Well, one of the writers for this was Michael Pertwee. Was Michael Pertwee ever in Madrid, or was he? No.
I don't think so. I didn't meet him, so he may have been there, but I didn't meet him.
Because no doubt that's why John is in the film, because obviously Michael being his brother, so I assume that's why he got the. We did have another question come in. It was so would you have preferred to have played more action characters like Mrs. Peel and the Avengers in your career? Would you have liked more action roles, or
I would have loved more active roles, because at that time, the women in television, particularly, the women were just there to dress the set and give it a bit of glamour. And it was the Avengers that started women actually doing something, and I would have loved that. And in Randall and Hopkirk, and with Mike and Kenny both, we tried to get more action for me.
Hmm.
And they, with their help too, they wanted me more in the series. And we talk about different things, including comedy, bringing more comedy into it. So I didn't ever get the chance in my roles to be active the way I would like to have been. But at least I pulled myself out of just being the Jeannie Hopkirk, and I with Dennis
A Spooner.
Spooner. That's him. My head went. Yeah, with Dennis Spooner's help, because he agreed with it. He was very happy to go along with us with a bit more humor and putting me into more things. He was on our side too, so that helped. But if that hadn't come up, if we hadn't pushed it, I'm not sure that I would have been given more, because you weren't.
You have a question coming from Ian regarding Randall Hopkirk. Although we have discussed this in our last event, so I'd recommend Ian to have a look at that. He basically just asked what you thought of the new version of Randall Hopkirk, but I'm going to rephrase that and just say, were you ever? Did they ever ask you to be in the new series when they did? It
No.
never came.
They kept well away from the original cast, thankfully.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, because you say that you didn't particularly think much of the series, but it seems odd that they didn't ask. Naturally, you'd think they'd want to somehow do a little kiss to the old series, or.
I don't think so. They wanted to do something completely different, and they knew we wouldn't be good in that. No, or we wouldn't have been in it. No.
No, and quite right, quite rightly so. See what else we got in the chat. Yeah, so quick question coming. What is your favourite role that you've played in your career?
What is the what?
Your favourite role to have played in your career?
Oh. I did a couple of theatre roles. In television, there was a series I did, one episode of a series I did called Mickey Dunn with Dinsdale Landon. And I really enjoyed working with him in that. It was a good script and we worked very well together, and it was, I liked the character I played. We did well in that, so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed a lot of Randall and Hopkirk, I did. And I liked working with Roger. Nothing really springs to mind as my favorite role. There were ones that I really liked, but when I was working in television, there was so much going on. You came from one to another, and you didn't really have time, unless it was outstandingly good or something different. You didn't really hang on to that. Theatre I loved, and there were a couple of roles in theatre that I truly was happy with. And I loved doing this movie. I did. I loved doing anything. So I guess that was one of my favorite roles, only because I just loved the whole experience.
Oh yeah, it's a lovely film, and it's lovely production design, lovely costumes, and I think your makeup is fantastic in the film. Do you? Yeah, and of course, do you remember the costume designer or any behind the scenes people?
The costume designer I can't remember, but the set designer was Tony Walton.
Oh yeah, Tony Walton. Yes, yeah. I think he might have actually done the costumes as well. Actually, I think he's credited for both. So I think he did the I think he did production, and I think he did costumes as well.
Oh, did Tony do costumes?
I think he had a dual role, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I like Tony. He was a lovely man.
We did have another comment that came in that I thought was relevant. Oh yes, Ian said he remembers the series Mickey Dunn, but sadly all episodes have been destroyed. So that
I
must have been
know.
BBC White.
I heard
Yeah.
that. Yes. What a shame.
I mean, as an actor, I mean, obviously, would you like these things to be rediscovered, like say Doctor Who occasionally comes back, or do you just think that it's something you did and you moved on and you're not too precious about it existing or not?
Ask me again, because I didn't
Yeah, sorry.
all of that.
I was just saying, does the fact that some of your work no longer exists, or as an actor, do you does it not bother you in the way that it does a fan, for example, if something is?
Well, I was disappointed that Mickey Dunn disappeared, because I would have loved to have seen that again to see, was I right, all these years later. And then you put a lot of work into things and it just disappears, and it's so good. But it's not something that has bothered me a great deal. It would if it was something that I thought was truly exceptional.
Yeah.
And most of the things that I was in have been preserved, so I'm very lucky that way.
We're watching the feast sequence with the acrobats, and just there's some good sort of stunt work here. Would you have been witness to this filming?
Which was that coming? What part of that is towards the end?
Yeah, sort of. It's the feast, and there's some acrobats, and Phil Silvers is masquerading as one of the acrobats.
Oh yes, I know. I didn't. I saw a little bit of those scenes, but I wasn't involved, and they didn't allow lots of people on the set when they were doing some of them. I didn't really see that. I saw Phil doing a couple of other things, but I didn't see that. I thought when I saw the movie, I thought they were just brilliantly funny, really cool. I wish I had been there to see them. I was probably off doing some second unit stuff, or just had a day off, for all I know.
So they kept you quite busy, it sounds like, for those few months.
Yeah, we were.
I did read in my research that this feast sequence, obviously there's a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables and things as part of the feast.
Which all rotted away in the sun.
Yeah, yes. I was wondering if you remembered hearing that at the time.
Oh yes. Actually, the set was quite good, because it was truly rather smelly sometimes, and grotty. And you'd walk in there. They used to clean it up, of course, but it was meant to look grotty, and it was. And any of the sort of real stuff they put there, well, it was very hot in part of the time, so that would just waste away.
Yeah. It sounds like it was very authentic feeling sometimes. I had a nice question here, I think. Is it difficult to do comedy without an audience? Obviously, because acting is about, well, a lot of comedy, certainly live, is about reacting to laughter. Is it more difficult to do in film?
It depends who you're working with. Because if you're working with someone good, then the laugh doesn't really matter so much, because you know that it's worked or not. It's a different ball game when you've got a live audience. When you're doing theatre and doing comedy, if you don't get a laugh, whoa, that's not so good. But when you're doing it without an audience, you're filming it, you have a different take on the whole thing. And you either know that it worked, usually you know if it worked or not. And quite often, other actors are sitting around watching, and you've got the director and you've got other people and you've got the crew. And quite often they may not laugh out loud, they're not supposed to do that, but you'll see reactions. And that's a good sort of thing to go on, because you'll see, the crew going, or laughing, or but without sound. So yeah, you do still get a bit of feedback. Yeah, you normally have people around filming, and quite often. And if they don't sort of stand there giving some sort of reaction, you're not too sure whether it really went down well or not.
But when it comes to stage work, is the comedies you've done on stage some of the hardest theatre?
Comedy is hard. It is hard because we've just talked about, you rely on the audience to tell you how it went. And some nights it'll go really, really well, and you'll get laughs and you'll get reactions, and then other times you'll get a different type of audience who don't want to be. They may be laughing, but they're quiet, and that's terrible, because you want them to tell you by laughing. And if I'm in an audience watching something, and I get this sort of, I'm with people who are quiet around me, and I think it's funny, I will laugh out loud, trying to say to people, this is right, you can laugh, you can do this, because it's just awful if you don't get a reaction. And you know that didn't go well, we better re-rehearse that and see what we can do.
Do you have a favourite theatre that you've worked in your career? Do you have a favourite theatre, maybe in the West End or?
I worked in the West End. I worked at 3 or 4 different theatres. The Queen's Theatre I liked very much. I only worked there once, but I liked the theatre. And the Mayfair Theatre I worked in for I did a long run there, which was a lovely little theatre, but backstage wasn't so good. The dressing rooms and things were pretty naff. No, and in England, you see, I did a lot of touring as well. So I got to work in masses of theatres all around the country. And I did have a couple of favourite ones there. I love the Theatre Royal in Brighton. And I think it was the Theatre Royal in Norwich. And the theatre in Darlington, of all places, which is Yorkshire. And I liked that theatre. I liked the man who ran it. And because I love Yorkshire, and I would spend my days out on the moors or looking around and go visiting places and things. So, I've had a lot of good experience with theatres and things, and I have a few that I liked very much.
Yep, lovely. Did you do much Shakespeare at all on stage?
I did not. I did Shakespeare on television. I think I only did the one, it was The Merchant of Venice, and I played Jessica. No, I didn't get that opportunity. In fact, I had an experience with Peter, what was his name? Peter Hall at the Royal Shakespeare. And I was young. I mean, I hadn't been in England very long, maybe about 3-4 years before I did this movie. And I'd worked with a lot of comedians. I'd worked with Benny Hill, and I worked with many others that I'd played straight girl to or something. And I auditioned for the part of in not King Lear, The Tempest, Miranda in The Tempest. And he had me reading several things, and he was obviously very interested. You can tell when they don't let you go on and on unless they like it. And then he said, okay, that's it for now, and you'll hear from us. And as he was walking up this center aisle, up through the seats, he suddenly stopped and turned around. He said, oh, by the way, what have you been working in recently? And I said, well, actually, I've been doing quite a lot of television. And he stopped and he said, oh, we don't use television actors. And that.
Yeah. I did hear there was quite a bit of snobbery back then in terms of, I
Yeah,
think, yeah, to TV and also TV to film as well. There was kind of sort of, you do
it
this,
was.
you,
And
yeah.
just after that, it all became fine. But I mean,
Mm.
it was ridiculous, and that left me a bit cold about trying for Shakespeare.
Yeah. Did you do theatre throughout your career, always coming back to
Yeah,
the
what?
stage?
Sorry?
Did you
Yeah.
always return to the theatre throughout your career?
Yes, if I tried to. Oh, I did. I did from when I came to England. I did theatre, and then I did a long stint in television and film. That was
Mm.
what I was getting all the work in. I think it was about 12 years
Mm.
before I got the opportunity to do theatre again. And then I started working in theatre much more, which I loved.
And did you find as the years went by, theatre progressed very much like TV and film did in terms of attitudes and the people involved?
It's a whole different thing, theatre.
Mm.
It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
I just loved being in theatre, and I mean, if you were with a cast that you didn't like, that could be a bit traumatic.
Yeah.
But that really didn't happen. You know, that really didn't happen. A couple of people you may not have got on with, but normally you do. And I just, that's my first love. Theatre is my first love. I can't do it now, but yeah.
So I've got another question coming in, again, theatre related. When doing theatre, do you prefer touring productions or productions that remain in the same theatre throughout the run?
Well, I like to be in a theatre where you're doing a long run, but I did love touring, but you can't do that forever. You know, I
No.
mean, it's all very well to be away for weeks on end and seeing other parts of the country and all. I loved all that, but you need to also to be a little settled. And so when I did a play in the West End, I enjoyed that because you could be at home and then you could be in the theatre.
When you did the theatre, say back in the 60s, was it the 8 shows a week we have now, or was it a bit less demanding?
Oh, theatre's never less demanding. Theatre's always demanding. It's just different types of theatre, and it depends what you do. There's so much in theatre you can do, from musicals to heavy dramas to Shakespeare to classics, you know, anything. So it's just it's always demanding. Always.
Do you find that the theatre today would it be fair to say that it's become a bit too commercial in the respect that we have a lot of things, you know, you can now go and see Dirty Dancing the musical and all that sort of thing. Do you think it's become dumbed down a little bit, watered down? Is that fair?
I think I haven't seen enough theatre in recent years because I haven't been really too close to the theatres to be able to get to them. But from my impression and odd bits that I've seen, maybe that have been recorded or something, I don't know. I think there are some that are very good. There have to be some that are very good, but I think that some of the big productions are things that I wouldn't particularly want to be involved in.
Yeah. I mean, I like to go to the West End. Obviously, you know, pre-pandemic, I was going to see maybe eight or 10 shows in the West End a year, and I live down in the southwest, so obviously that's quite a big trip to go up to London all the time. And I think you've got to be a bit more careful, I think, now of what you go and see. But you're right, there are these productions that, you know, I think are you know, but if you pick and choose, I think there's still some great stuff out there.
I think so too. I would be very careful about musicals today because I don't think they work quite as well as they used to work. But that's, you know, I shouldn't be saying this really because I just haven't seen enough recently, only small patches of some, and there we are.
Yeah, I think it's like what we were saying about TV changing last time, that there's still good stuff out there. It's just there's more of it, and therefore you've got to be. It takes a while to find the really good stuff. So Ian's asked if you were asked to play a part in either Coronation Street or EastEnders or Emmerdale, one of the soaps, for a year's work.
I did Crossroads.
Oh, right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did a few months in Crossroads when Sue Lloyd was in it.
Yeah.
At that time, and I was in for quite a few episodes. I think it was 3 or 4 months, and then they brought me back for a couple of months to sort of finish off the storyline, and that was a different experience because I'd never done a soap before, and their time schedule. You didn't have a lot of rehearsal time, and it was you were really filming on your feet, as it were. You know, it was a different ballgame, but I enjoyed it because the people, the cast were just lovely. Everybody involved, they were absolutely terrific. I liked them very much. And one of the girls is now still one of my best friends, who played Sue Hansen.
Oh, lovely.
Mm.
You mentioned Sue Lloyd. I just wanted to know a bit more about Sue Lloyd, if you remember.
How much? Well, we were great friends for 46 years. So I remember we shared a house for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I knew Sue very well, but that's another story for another time.
Oh, yeah, we can keep them coming. Yeah, that's fine with me. So what else I wanted to ask you? So I just perhaps want to go through a few more of the cast for this wonderful film. Obviously, we have Roy Kinnear, who's just about to come on the screen now as the gladiator. Do you remember much about Roy?
No, because I didn't work with him. You know, we had a few words together, whatever, but we weren't in the same scenes at all. So no, I didn't really have much to do with Roy. I loved his work. But, no, I didn't get to know him. Not at all.
And obviously he was one of Dick Lester's go-to players. He was in a lot of his films, and I think you mentioned last time he obviously had an accident on the Return of the Musketeers, and I think he had a heart attack and died the day later because of the trauma to his body.
I can't remember when. It was a few years after this movie, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it must have been. I think they did the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers. That was mid-70s. So I think it was maybe 88. I want to say. So quite a few years after this, and I think it was because of that accident and that Dick Lester retired from film, and he's still around, but very much in the shadows, and I don't think anybody could really, get him out for interviews or anything. He's just sort of quite happy being in the background. So when you were saying that his philosophy was perhaps to push the stunts a bit too far and all that sort of thing, I wonder whether that may have contributed to accidents like obviously with Roy, unfortunately, and but the fact that he took it so hard suggests I would have thought that he would have been very sort of safety conscious. So that, I think, is the biggest surprise for me to hear, really.
I don't think it was a thing of safety conscious with him. I think it was what's going to look great in the movie, what's going to look great on film.
Yeah.
I think the other wasn't sort of particularly there.
Well, I think a filmmaker has to be very sort of absorbed in obviously what they're capturing on the screen. So and you do hear of cases of films where there's sort of somebody has an accident and nobody notices it's going to happen because they're so focused on that. Keep shooting, sort of thing. Is that your general experience with directors? They're very sort of focused in the shot.
They are, well, it depends. I mean, they don't do that if you've got a set shot, but when you've got something like I had with the chariot, or us climbing in the thing or whatever, you sort of see how it goes, I think, from a director's point of view, and let it go if it looks like it's working. And if it doesn't seem, if it isn't in the script to have an end date at that point, if, you know, like Dick didn't mind spending the film, you know, using the film. So he just let it run to see if anything else would happen, would be good to keep in the thing. In those terms, I think he did that, and maybe some directors do, but a lot of the time they've got a particular time slot or film slot to do. A lot of directors, so I don't know.
One of the very good performances in this film is Inga Nilsson as Gymnastica, which is obviously a wonderful name. Do you remember Inga Nilsson, who played
Yes, I do. Yeah, she was very nice. I liked her. We talked quite a lot. She was tall, very, very, very attractive girl. And yes, aside from, I mean, I didn't get friendly with her, but we spoke quite a lot. There were some nice girls in that, a couple who weren't. They were very attractive, and they were good. And yeah, I don't remember. There were the twins.
Oh yes, yes.
The twins, and they were quite funny, but I didn't really get to know them very well. They were a bit of a handful, actually.
Yes, I can imagine. Yes. So we mentioned obviously Zero. We mentioned Phil Silvers. Buster Keaton. I did hear that Buster was terminally ill when filming this. I think he died of cancer.
When he did all that, he was 85. He went out and did his own running and pratfalls, refused to let anyone do it for him. He actually would be, I was with him a couple of times when we were chatting away, sitting down, and his wife would come over with the oxygen thing and give him oxygen. So yes, he wasn't at all well, but you wouldn't have known it. You know, he just, he was just, everybody just loved him. And he did die about 3 or 4 months after the end of that movie.
Yeah, because it was his last film credit.
Yes, it was. I think it was in the March or April. Pardon me.
I was wondering about Jack Guilford.
Jack was everyone was so nice, but Jack was a particularly nice man and very talented. Sorry, I've got allergies, so my voice is starting to bother me. Yes, no, he was a lovely man. I was. I think I'm going to have to stop.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. I'll just pause it at the moment. Do you want to take a couple minutes break or?
Yeah, I am going to have to stop shortly. We've been a long time.
We've got 10 minutes left on the film, so if you can if we just want to go for 10 minutes, and then I'll cut us off, and we can perhaps do another down the line, perhaps.
Okay. Yes. Fine.
That'd be okay. Did you want to take a little couple?
Tell me when we're going back on, and I think I'm getting okay.
Yeah, I'll give you a few moments just to have a drink and stuff. As you say, the weather's not great, is it, for being cooped up at the moment?
Oh.
Yeah, I get a bit of hay fever, but thankfully I never get too bad. I used to get terrible chest infections when I was a kid, and that was never pleasant in the autumn, but I thankfully grew out of those. So, but yeah, I know what it's like to suffer a bit.
Yeah. Here we've got a lot of allergies here, but so anyway, yeah. I think
got some lovely birds in the somebody got some lovely birds in the garden, so quite nice. Lots of wildlife where you are.
Oh yes, yes. We've got masses of birds. I'm amazed they're not all cheeping around out there now. They can hear me, so they're not coming to the feeder at the moment.
So we'll just press play again. So for anybody watching along, it's we're continuing at 1 hour, 26 minutes and 4 seconds. So 3, 2, 1, go. So yeah, we just mentioned obviously Jack Guilford. So was there anything else you wanted to add about Jack before we move on to someone else? Sorry, we mentioned Jack Guilford a moment ago. Was there anything else you wanted to add about Jack before we?
No, because I didn't socialize with him. He was somewhere. I think his wife was there, and they had their own plans. Just that working with him, he was kind and would take time to talk to you, and very funny. I mean, he was a funny man to talk to. And you know, I didn't do a lot of work with him. I did scenes with him there, but I didn't have any particular scenes just with him. So
yeah. Do you have any comments about Frank Thornton at all? Whether you would have spent much time with Frank Thornton? No.
I didn't get to know him at all.
Just I think who else is worth mentioning really. From a fan point of view, it's quite interesting to see Janet Webb making an appearance as sort of the one of the slave girls, because Janet Webb obviously appears in the Morecambe Wise show as the lady at the end of the episode with Morecambe and only Wise, yeah. So I was quite interested to see her pop up in the film.
I didn't hear who you said. Who was it?
Oh, Janet Webb.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So I just need to mention Michael Hordern. Does that ring a bell?
Oh yes, Michael. I did a scene with. He was Michael's father in it. And no, I did mention actually that he was extremely nice man, wonderful actor. And, he didn't socialize. I think his wife was there, and he was a rather quiet man. I'm sorry, I'm not being able to talk too much at the moment because my throat's going berserk.
Oh, that's right. I'll try and talk a bit more on your behalf. So see if there's anything else worth sort of mentioning really. I think really, because obviously Zero was obviously in the the Broadway production, but also I think there was a couple of other sort of connections with the Broadway production and the film. I'm just trying to see from my notes who it was. I think the second, it's one of the actors also. So I think there's a couple of actors, so Zero and one of the other male actors who was in the Broadway production as well. So there was a couple of them that transferred over.
Was it Jack Guilford?
Oh yes, that's it. Yes, thank you. Yes, that's the one. Yeah. I think Jack Guilford. Yeah, I think he was in the original production. Anything else I should mention? Let's see if we've got any questions coming. I think we might have a couple more questions come through. So Ian said, I enjoyed your autobiography. Would you have liked to do more writing in your career, for example, TV or theatre?
Writing?
Yeah. No?
Short answer, no.
Yeah, I think it's a very sort of, well, it's a very lonely activity, I would have thought. And you hear of a lot of writers who go a bit stir crazy and tend to, some of them do die quite young. So, I don't think I would like to be in a room, with my own thoughts for too long, really. So I understand that entirely.
Well, I'm married to a writer. He's still here.
There are exceptions, of course. Yes, it depends on temperament and things, but I think I would fall apart. I think if I was, it wouldn't be me at all. Ian said that you obviously were in the Prisoner episode. It's Your Funeral with Darren Nesbitt and Mark Eden. Do you remember working with Patrick McGowan on that?
Yes, I do. Very much so. Hated him.
Oh, because it was.
I'm sort of. It's quite well known my feelings about Patrick McGowan. We worked together we worked in The Prisoner in several scenes together. I mean, that's the only one I did work with. And he was absolutely awful to work with. But I think it sparked me into giving a better performance.
Oh yeah, he had something to bounce off. I think The Prisoner is one of those series that I don't think people even today really know what it's about, and it's so off the wall. It must be even more confusing to make. I would have thought.
I didn't have a clue what I was doing all the way through it. Not a clue. No. But it's been very successful. It's very popular over here in the States.
Yeah. I think sometimes with art, if people don't understand it, it's usually people think, oh, it must be really good, let's give it an Oscar or something like that. It's something about, it seems to happen from time to time. Just about a bit of trivia about the film. Obviously, the title is derived from a line that vaudeville comedians tend to use. They'll usually say a funny thing that happened on the way to the theatre. So obviously, that's where the thing that happened on the way to the Forum, of course. I did read that there was more musical numbers in the Broadway production, and they cut them down for the film. And I think when I was watching it again, I thought there was more musical numbers in it than they actually were.
It probably was. They often do that. They'll change a little bit, take some in or put some out. Put some in or take some out. So there was probably, I don't know, there probably was a number or two that changed or was not in the movie.
So I assume you were quite pleased that you just had the two songs rather than one every 20 minutes or so.
Just the two.
Let's see what else I need to ask. And I thought another bit of interesting trivia I found when, again, the audience might find this interesting. This story is based upon a playwright who was around 254 to 184 BC, called Titus Macus Platius, also just known as Platius. And his comedies are the earliest surviving complete literature works from that time period. So obviously some of his stories and even obviously the character turns up in this film. So I thought that was rather interesting, how the origins of this all sort of came about.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. Yeah.
And oh yes, I found a bit of my notes where it says Jack Clifford was in the original Broadway production, so we were right on that one.
Yes.
And yes, obviously Tony Walton was the designer and the costume as well. But I did read, and you were saying about Buster not being doubled. I did read up that Michael Dillon did do a bit of doubling for some of the running scenes. So but it sounds like Buster would have said, "Oh no, I want to do as much as I can from your recollections."
Yeah.
Just seeing this wonderful end credits on the film, and the credits obviously have the animations have a lot of flies and around the fruit and things, and obviously that's a little bit of an in joke because of the the problems that were on set, as we mentioned earlier. So that's worth a bit of trivia. So as we come to an end of this watch along, do you have any other anything we haven't mentioned about this particular film, or any closing comments that you'd like to make about it?
I think I've covered most of what I can remember. I mean, obviously, if I sat and thought about it a lot, some other things might come up. But I think no, I think I've covered things that are in my head about it. Wonderful stories and certain, if I was sitting with someone and watching the movie, it would probably, I'd recall something and could talk about it then. But I know I've run out of voice as well. So
I will wrap it up. There's just one comment that Ian said that I just wanted to pass on to you. Ian said that he saw you in a production of a stage show many years ago in Edinburgh. I don't think he remembers what the show was, but do you remember what? Do you do a few things in Edinburgh, stage-wise?
Well, I did in Perth. Edinburgh, I did one, but that was not one he'd remember me in. That was way back. I think it was my first stage show in England, and I didn't have a particular role in that. But I don't think I played it, but I did play Perth. I played Glasgow a lot, several times, and Perth. I loved Perth.
And also, Ian just said, many thanks, Annette and Philip, for tonight's another great evening. So Ian's watched a few of my events, so obviously he's enjoyed it. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, Ian. So I just wanted to say on behalf of everyone watching, either live or on YouTube, thank you very much, Annette, for joining us for this evening. And I hope obviously your allergies and things to get better quite soon. I'm actually taking a break from doing these events because I've done 21 in 4 months, so I feel a bit exhausted. So I'm hoping to take a little hiatus, and then maybe September, October, when it's cooler, the allergies have gone, maybe we could do another one around then, sort of thing.
Sure, absolutely.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, and take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you very much, and the same to you. And thanks for everybody who has been watching.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.